Hello, I'm Ian Henschke and welcome to State Line South Australia. In a moment, the Immigration Department's answers to questions about the proposed detention centre for the Adelaide Hills. But first to Port Adelaide. It's long been a dream of the state government, the Land Management Corporation and many people in the port area to transform the industrial region of the Docklands into a residential style development. Well, now the wisdom of those plans is being questioned. A report by the Environment Protection Authority says it does not support the next stage of the new Port Keys development because of a range of issues, including unacceptably high levels of dangerous microparticles from nearby industries. The government is downplaying the issue, calling for calm, but the opposition is demanding the Planning Minister resign. For decades, people have been demanding the clean-up of the port. Pollution has been poisoning the dolphins and also causing problems for people as well. Since the early 1990s, residents have been calling for action.
Well, there's pollution from the trucks, pollution from the cement works here, you've got pollution from everything.
Your place is always dusty and on your roofs and things like that.
And the problems in the area still exist today. Dr Brian Astle has lived in the shadow of the Adelaide Brighton cement works since 1980. Back then, it was a fraction of its present size. The retired academic is on the Adelaide Brighton Cement Community Liaison Group and says, like many other locals, he has lung problems. He says doctors say the moment you drive over the Birkenhead Bridge, you immediately encounter lung problems.
Well, they know it exists, but they've got no medication that will treat it, other than please move to a healthier climate.
But the EPA's report recommending the next stage of Newport Keys not go ahead has clearly upset the government, the developers and the would-be buyers. The Greens' Mark Parnell obtained the alarming report under freedom of information because he said he knew the problems would be there and he hopes the government will support its recommendations.
Dust pollution is a serious health risk. It doesn't sound like much, but particulate matter of the size 10 microns or less, the really small dust particles, they're the ones that go deepest into the lungs. They're the ones that cause serious respiratory problems and asthma and a whole range of things. We need to keep those dust levels down to acceptable levels.
The EPA has given the Dock 1 site in the heart of the port 3 strikes because it's too close to the fuel storage depot, the Pivot chemical plant and the Adelaide Brighton cement factory. It says air pollution is one of the biggest problems and already it exceeds safety guidelines at a nearby monitoring station. It says any future residents would be exposed to unacceptably high levels of particles. And it concludes that the EPA does not consider the site be suitable for residential development and is therefore unable to support the proposed land division. It also comments that despite the fact that companies have been reducing emissions, there are limits to the improvements industry can make.
Already, the people of Port Adelaide are putting up with unacceptable pollution. Why on earth would we add 500 new residents into this particular spot, which the EPA has said is far too close to the sources of this pollution?
And if push comes to shove, Port Adelaide Enfield Council Mayor Gary Johansson says we'd be better off favouring Adelaide Brighton Cement over another housing development.
I think they would have a lot of problems to address the EPA guidelines while Adelaide Brighton Cement remains in that location.
And is Adelaide Brighton Cement going to move?
I would hope not. They are critical to the state, they are a good employer, and they do everything humanly possible to do the best thing by the environment given the nature of their business.
Moreover, Gary Johansson says if council had had its way, instead of the government having its way, it would never have come to this. If the council had been running this and not the state government through the Land Management Corporation, would things have been done very differently?
The council certainly has had concerns for a long, long time in this area. Many years ago, our council introduced a system to stop increases in densities in housing in certain sections of the Lefevre Peninsula because of the known health risks to people living in the area. We didn't want to expose further people to those risks. And this was one of the problems with this development, that council was effectively shut out.
As for the government, it says the planning process was suspended once the EPA report was received, and Planning Minister Paul Holloway emphasises that that process is run by the Independent Development Assessment Commission.
If you have a problem Adelaide Brighton, then really, you know, that's a matter for the EPA. It's up to them to control existing industry. I mean,
the EPA has said it doesn't consider the site suitable for residential development. The EPA is saying it quite clearly. This site is not suitable for residential development.
It's talking about a site that is the other side of the river, well south of it. And my understanding is one of the issues is the proximity to the Invertech pivot plant where they produce ammonium nitrate.
The report clearly states that one of the big issues is actually the particles that are in the air that are coming from Adelaide Brighton cement.
Well, look, I haven't seen the EPA report because, as I said, it goes to the planning.
Wouldn't you have read the report before you came out to briefed on the report? Were you aware of what was in it?
Look, the report goes to DAC's the independent decision-making body, and it's acted appropriately. Well, I'm here to defend the planning system.
But while the planning process is suspended, sales are not. On ABC Radio this morning, Urban Construct's Todd Brown said sales in the development have continued since the EPA reports came in. Isn't it appropriate that developers should get a clean bill of health before they start selling properties? Do you think that's a better way of going?
Well, look, that's really a different...
In hindsight, wouldn't it have been better?
Well, look, I mean, that would be, you know, require laws that impact on all developers. You'd say never sell off the plan. Would that mean projects develop? I mean, you're really talking about
But in a place where you've actually got...
You're talking about a consumer affairs issue here. I don't know that I should just pass it off the cusp. Cut judgment out something about, you know, someone else's portfolio in my area. I mean, really, whether we should have off the plan sales, that's a more, you know, that's a complex issue for another day. Let me just say we have had for many, many years.
The opposition says you should step down.
I mean, well, of course I won't. I mean, what a joke.
Urban Construct would not be interviewed on State Line, but it issued a statement saying they have been advised by the relevant government agencies that they are working on issues raised by the EPA, and with the information we have been provided, we are confident that they can be resolved in due course. Adelaide Brighton Cement says it's looking at the feasibility of a $50 million expansion to the plant. It operates under EPA controls and it supports the EPA's recommendation that residential developments are kept out of an exclusion area around the plant. As for the EPA, it issued a release late today emphasising no one site should be blamed for the pollution. Mark Parnell says we should be listening to their advice.
What's the point of seeking the advice of health experts if we're going to ignore them? Sure, there's risk everywhere, but this is the 21st century. We are planning new development for new residents. It makes no sense to just replicate the problems of the past.